xin chính âm thanh chúng phần phần khói mây hành tung dường đào chiều mơ đã lan truyền nơi vùng nơi nhờ chân lý chúng dân đều thoát ngộ đồng khí kinh quỷ dưới đại dẫn hóa tâm linh kiến màu nắng tươi vàng đại quang minh sáng huy hoàn trong yêu điều hào quang khi nào thiên chiếc sai khắp cùng còn sai phần nào đó cùng nhau tình tâm vào hiện tại Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.
Con hãy làm nên thương lòng nhân ta mai bảo con cùng tiếng thơ chậm ngày thức dậy phần đã từ lời chân để tám hoa tung ở đường Nam mô Hương Dương Bồ Tát Nam mô Hương Dương Bồ Tát Nam mô Hương Dương Bồ Tát Chư Phật Đại Thánh Tôn giáo pháp môn Pháp Tòng thiên nhân chí đạo sư thầy cổ đã quy y gia tam tinh đại nam mô thế giới mười phương thượng nguồn hữu vô thượng chư Phật. Nhớ theo pha thường rượu thanh tình chủ đa la nắm trừ tam tâm bình duy cố ngã quy y gia tam tính đại nam mô thế giới mười phương thượng nguồn hữu vô lượng nghĩa pháp. Đại địa cư Bồ Tát thanh tịnh cư sa môn trong chú nhân gian bồ hì cổ ngã quy y gia tam tính đại nam mô thế giới mười phương thượng nguồn hữu vô lượng thánh địa.
morning. For Sunday service to all. Happy to see you. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to practice meditation. For the newcomers, I would like to give you some basic guidance how to meditate. We all be sitting comfortable while the person or your chairs. Now, use your hands to massage your face and neck, back, arm, legs, be comfortable and ready for meditation session. In Buddhism, there are many ways we can meditate in order to achieve a state of one quality of mind. The most effective and common method with you is following your breath. In this method, you need to choose the tension point of your breath, usually the area around the neck or the middle part of the rib. When you breathe in, mindfully acknowledge your breath pass by the tension point. When you breathe out, mindfully acknowledge your breath pass by the tension point. But the most important advice, you need to follow your breath continuously in order to avoid this arising of a stream of thought in your mind. However, if you need distraction from outside or one unwanted thought arising in your mind, don't go. Return to the main object of meditation with your breath and touching point. When you hear the second bell, that's the end of meditation. Once again, with your mindfulness, use your hands to massage the back to back your arm. Be ready for training session. I always remind myself you all now. When you go home, try to practice meditation every day. Early in the morning, late at night, long, short session, and your heart convenience. However, if you do it faithfully every day, with due time, you will achieve a state of one perfect mind. Wisdom will develop and happiness will follow. Thank you.
trong tình ngưỡng mong này chúng tinh tấn nhiếp tâm thiện tập nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Ca Mâu Ni Phật. Nam mô Bổn Sư Thích Ca Mâu Ni Phật.
The Heart Sutra.
Self-existence, thus we overcame all suffering and troubles. The homeless, knowledge from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from this emptiness, and emptiness is from the same empty set of feelings, conceptions, actions, and consciousness. Remove from the characteristics of the emptiness of all not arising, not ceasing, not defiling, not immaculate, not increasing, and not decreasing. In emptiness there are no thoughts, no feelings, no conceptions, no actions, no consciousnesses, no ideas, no body, no mind, no thoughts, no order, takes no object, no identity, until we come to no elements of consciousness, no ignorance, and no negation of ignorance, no occasion, and no suffering, and no good of the causes of suffering, of the cessation of suffering, of the fact there is no knowledge and no attainment whatsoever by reason of non-attainment. The Bodhisattva growing in Prajna Paramita has no obstacle in his mind, because there are no obstacles in his mind. He has no fear and going far beyond all verdicts, views, confusions, and imaginations, reaches the ultimate of the past, present, and future by relying on the Prajna Paramita, but the supreme enlightenment. Therefore, one should know that the Prajna Paramita is the great mantra, the mantra of great wisdom, the excel mantra, and the equal of the unequal mantra that is capable of aligning all suffering truly, because it is devoid of falsehood. This is the mantra programmed in the Prajna Paramita. The mantra is proclaimed as follows: Gate Gate Gara Gate Gara Sangate Bodhisattva Gate Gate Gara Gate Gara Sangate Bodhisattva Gate Gate Gara Gate Gara Sangate Bodhisattva.
Evoking the Buddha's names.
Namo Buddhaya, 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 Namo
In reciting the Mahaprajna Paramita Heart Sutra, we dedicate its merits to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the peace of the world, the peace of this temple, the strength and sound practice of its members, to the restoration and health of the natural world, its waters, plants, and creatures, and to all efforts in its service with gratitude. May this good karma be extended to all relations, and may we realize the Buddha way together.
All Buddhas, Buddhas, praise and time, all Buddhas, Sampamaya, Sampamaya, Prajna, Paramita, all Buddhas, Buddhas, praise and time, all Buddhas, Sampamaya, Sampamaya, Prajna, Paramita, all Buddhas, Buddhas, praise and time, all Buddhas, Sampamaya, Sampamaya,
The Metta Sutta.
This is what should be done by one who is skilled in business and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and cruel in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud in humanity nature. Let them not do the slightest thing, not the wise to deliberately rule. Why should be practiced in mistake? May all beings be at peace, whatever the beings that may be, whether they are weak or strong, or weak or harm, the great or mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those wanting to be born, may all beings be at peace. Let none see another as high being in his faith. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as the mother protects the life, the child on the child, so with the Lord's heart, through one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths. Outward and guarded, free from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness,
Once you sustain this revelation, this exact is the fire of I am now going to the experience of the pure heart one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again to the world of suffering. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my children be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, or spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion.
Gate of sweet nectar.
Being one with the Brahman in the 10 directions, being one with the Sangha in the 10 directions, being one with all the prophets comes to us, great and kind, being one with our great all teachers, Sakyamuni Buddha, being one with the great masters, to great Bodhisattva, being one with the Samantha Bodhisattva, being one with the great compassion, Bodhisattva, being one with the Mahamaya, being one with the unconditioned Tathagata, being one with the boundless Tathagata, Vishnu, perfect sustainers, being one with the impressionable body, Tathagata, and the nectar of Brahma's temple, being one with all Buddha, including the water wheel of compassion.
Supplication for the raising of the Bodhi mind, vow to feed the hungry spirits.
Raising the Bodhi mind, the supreme milk is offered to all the hungry spirits who must taste and time, healing the smallest one people to the largest, they all you
spirits in the 10 directions. Please gather here, sharing your distress. I offer you this food offering. It will resolve trust and comfort.
Prayer, food sharing.
I pray that all who receive this offering will return its merits to all who God and to all creations who must taste it. In this way they will be plural disciples of mine.
Prayer for raising the Bodhi mind.
I further pray that in receiving this meal, all your suffering will be healed in nature and regularly liberated, so that we enjoy the sweet bond you will play freely in the fields of the pure and praising the holy mind and practicing the enlightened way you become the future Buddha. Without any further request, those who realize the way from three vows to live the ways of godless throughout space and time.
Prayer to fulfill these vows.
I further beseech you to sustain me day and night and give me courage to fulfill my vows.
Prayer for transferring the merit of this practice.
In offering this meal, I pray that you give its merits equally to all creation. In the Dharma book, we transfer the merits of this offering to the Dharma world of beauty and the to unsurpassable enlightenment and to all the Buddha's
With all our love, with all our spirits, and with all our might, inviting misery and suffering no longer, we vow to accomplish the way. May all creations in the Dharma world swiftly accomplish the Buddha way together.
all Buddhas who must take and time, all Bodhisattvas, all Buddhas who must take and time, all Bodhisattvas, all Buddhas who must take and time, all Bodhisattvas,
nguyện thờ phương chư Phật chư Đại Bồ Tát chư Hiền thánh tâm từ bi pháp hảo quan gia hộ cho thế giới được tập vĩnh tiêu trừ tượng vật kia tường vĩnh đi khổ pháp sư nguyện cửu yêu lớn tổ đã lâm luận bảo tầm tư nhập định siêu phàm đi thế hoa thân pháp nam tam đồ cô hồn trời mắt chiến sĩ chẳng văn nhập vào thứ nam thừa thứ siêu tinh cực là các kỳ siêu hương tinh nơi nằm nhà lâm này cùng hương đến trong mùi phương nữ danh lúa quỷ nữ quỷ vô danh trung thảo thảo tương thơ là Phật thường thừa tư công đức thừa tư Phật lực quảng vinh linh pháp tạo xuất tam đồ siêu tham tịnh độ do sanh không đạo pháp tội lâm tiêu nguyện cho tất cả hương linh đắc độ cao siêu kỳ giao quyển hạt xin lợi làm vô nguyện âm siêu dương thời pháp giới chúng sanh tinh giữ vô tình
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome everybody. And congratulations, not on Buddhist, voice and member, we all healthy. I don't remember we have any member have problem up to now at the city pandemic, right? And you know, we have one thing to do that we officially open the public. So service will be running every Sunday. However, and we know we need to keep on practice distancing and wear masks until near future. We don't know how long, but we wait. I think when you get the vaccine, everybody feel more comfortable and everything. Technology out. So try to do that, and actually we have been doing that for the last several weekends here. We all feel comfortable with it, right? We keep distancing here. So once again, we welcome you all back here, but we need to keep maintaining on distancing, social distancing, and environment on the time. Having said that, I'm welcoming Sensi Mori back to the service.
Yay!
As you know, we missed this Dhamma talk for last two Sunday service we have here. Small group of examples where we have Dhamma compassion take over the people's Dhamma talk. And actually we learn so much from him. So having said that, now on until the future, every Sunday we will have dance. Since the morning night here, now practice will take over. So we will, I hope we will continuously have either one or either four to learn and practice and Sunday, right? So that's a good news for us. Well, we have a special event this morning, right? So after service this morning, we will have the grand opening ceremony for the new year. So we stay with us, we have a good time together. Having said that, I would like to turn the microphone over to Sensei Morris. You can start your Dhamma.
So,
next week we will resume the exercise practice after the Sunday. So we have a lot of things going on.
so at the university where I'm a chaplain, when we do services, chapel services, everybody leaves their mask on except the person who's at the podium. So if it's okay with you, with everybody here, I'm going to take my mask off while I give a Dharma talk. Does anybody object to that? I mean, you're pretty far from me. So is everybody okay with that? Anybody who's not, no judgment. Okay.
Then before Sensei Morris talking, we talk about this before the service. Scientifically, we have changed to have social distancing. The best is, you wear a mask. But, some people are very uncomfortable with wearing a mask while we have it on. But, scientifically and medically, I think that's why we all have. We will test. First of all, give a possibility if you feel sick. And I will pass on you on. If you don't feel well, don't come. Okay, if you know exposure, you need to be home. But you come here, you wear mask to test. It's not, asymptomatic people. However, we all responsible for that. So, talking to Sensei Morris, he said that I feel more comfortable to be my happy. That's why I will say and hope that you all feel comfortable. Yes. All right. So,
Nobody feels comfortable. That's all right. You don't have to feel any particular way. You're doing the right stuff, right? So how you been? What have you been up to? It's been, I think the last time I was here was the Light Festival, or maybe the day after the Light Festival, back in March. So seems like years ago. Well, I mean, I was here for a couple of services in between, but I mean, here to give a Dharma talk and stuff. So I figured I would tell you what I've been doing, and we can have conversations later and find out how you've been using this time. So I've been giving 4 Dharma talks a week, typically, online. So I do one at Stetson And then I do some live streams on YouTube, and we have a Zoom meeting, which is sort of study group format, which has actually been really nice. Been several regulars. You're all welcome to attend. You just have to let me know that you want to come, and I'll give you the Zoom link and all of that stuff. So it's really interesting. I have done some things in the last several months that were it not for this, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do. And there are people now who were in our congregation in DeLand who moved away, who are now back, sort of, but able to do it virtually. I've had conversations with people from the Zen Peacemakers International Order about doing some projects with them. Otherwise, it would have never occurred to me to attend any of their virtual services and stuff. So it's, as unpleasant as this is, there are always opportunities, if you're looking for them, to practice. And one of the things to learn about Buddhism is everything that happens is something that you can drive into your practice. It's something you can practice with. So I've been very busy, and I've got to say I'm very thankful that my life is structured in such a way that I have a place to be, and I'm very reasonably supported and all of that. So, but as you go through life, be aware that there are people who are really suffering as a result of this thing, and so keep them in mind. And one of the things that I'm doing, by the way, is very soon we'll be launching a podcast. So I'll announce that when I actually finish editing the first episode and put it up. I'll announce that for sure, so that you'll know that that's happening. But it's an interesting time, and not necessarily in good ways, but it's we all have opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have had. And I've been doing things like I'm getting rid of a bunch of books. But I've also found some great online libraries. Just about everything is available. So I've started working my way slowly through the Flower Adornment Sutra, which I'll be giving you Dharma talks about that one of these days, I'm sure. I've been reading the works of this Chinese fellow named Venerable Master Chin Kung. Has a very interesting approach to the Dharma, and he keeps talking about the Flower Adornment Sutra. So I said, okay. Must be time for me to read that. And it's 1,600 pages, and it's really ponderous stuff, but fun if you find that sort of thing fun. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about the idea of teaching and learning, and knowledge and wisdom. What does it mean to teach? What does it mean to learn? What is knowledge? How is knowledge different from wisdom and stuff like that? And the reason I've been thinking about that is that these have come up in the context of some questions in some of these meetings and some emails I've gotten from people with questions and stuff. And, everyone who teaches has their own style of teaching, which is good because everyone has their own style of learning. Everybody brings something different to the table when they come to a spiritual practice. And so it's good to have different kinds of teachers because you have different kinds of learners. And so that's one kind of thing that's sort of important to know. Find something that's resonating with you. But part of this started when actually I posted something in one of the online discussion groups, and this guy started trolling me. And it's interesting, I posted a link to one of my Dharma talks because in answer to some stuff that had been going on in that group, and this guy said, it's just a bunch of words, it's not the real thing, just a bunch of words. And technically he's kind of right, words aren't Buddhism. Talking about Buddhism is not Buddhism, except that it sort of is. If you look at this idea of Buddha nature, how Buddha nature is something that's resident within us. And so why is it that we have to practice so hard? to realize that, well, when we're practicing, that is our Buddha nature. That is expression of our Buddha nature. And so talking about Buddhism, listening to Dharma talks, that's your Buddha nature, right? Unless you're getting really caught up in a bunch of, thinking about Buddhism instead of actually practicing Buddhism, in which case it's can be kind of a problem. But I want to give you a few things to consider. So first, we're reading a bunch of backstories from the Dhammapada for the Thursday night meeting. So the Dhammapada, for those of you who are new to this, is a collection of verses from the Pali Canon. Very short sayings of the Buddha that have a lot of profundity to them. Is profundity a word? Anyway, so they're very short sayings that have a lot of meaning. And they all have backstories. There's all, myth, folktale, just stories that nobody bothered to tell as a discourse and stuff like that. And so they're kind of interesting. What was going on that the Buddha happened to say something like, anger is never defeated by anger, only by non-anger is anger defeated. That's one of the verses from the Dhammapada. So what led up to that? And so we're reading a lot of these things together and talking about them. And in many of these stories, the Buddha, something happens and then the Buddha gives a Dharma talk and the people listening all become stream enterers. Stream enterer is the first stage of the path in the sort of traditional, first turning of the wheel of the Dharma view of what the Buddhist path is. Stream entry means you have accumulated enough merit, you've got enough wisdom that your enlightenment is inevitable. So you have entered the stream. The stream is made up of sort of drops of your good works. And you've entered this stream that will inevitably carry you toward freedom. And so sometimes the Buddha is talking and he clicks with whoever's listening, and as a result of listening, they gain stream entry. So this is one way that hearing, one result from listening to the Dharma. At the completely opposite end of the spectrum, there's a sutra that's sort of a non-sutra called the Flower Sutra. Not the Flower Garland Sutra or the Flower Adornment Sutra. This is different. The story is that the Buddha was giving in during his last days, came before a bunch of monks to give a Dharma talk, and he didn't say anything. And instead, he held up a flower. And one of the monks, Mahakassapa, saw this and smiled. And the Buddha said, I possess the true Dharma I, the marvelous mind of nirvana, the true form of the formless, the subtle Dharma gate that does not rest on words and letters, but is a special transmission outside the scriptures, and this I entrust to you, Mahakassapa. In other words, there is a reality, a realization that transcends the kind of stuff that you can say in discourses. And so he conveyed that just by holding up this flower and smiling. And this one monk got it, Mahakassapa, got it. So, and now here's a third thing. This is sort of in between those two. This is a Zen koan. A monk has just ordained, and the master sits down for his first conversation with him. And he asks him, why did you ordain? What do you want to get out of this? And all this kind of stuff. And he says, and the monk, of course, wants to awaken. And the master says, okay, do you plan to awaken by listening to the teachings? Or do you plan to awaken by studying the sutras, the scriptures? The monk, being a fairly smart guy, senses a trap. And he says, I don't plan to awaken by listening to the teachings, nor do I plan to awaken by listening to the scriptures. Master goes, well, good. He goes, but many people don't listen to teachings and don't read the scriptures. Why are they not all awake? Okay. You're looking confused, right? In other words, you got to do something if you want to wake up. You don't wake up just by hearing someone else talk. You don't wake up just by reading something, reading something that the Buddha said or whatever. And when if you came to listen to a Dharma talk and I held up a flower and smiled and that was it, you'd probably feel like you'd wasted a trip, right? So what do you do? And so this is a lot of what I've been doing for the last 6 months or so, has been thinking about sort of the pedagogy of teaching the Dharma. How do you do this? How do you teach? How do you make it possible for people to learn? And I realized, basically this happened sort of accidentally, I realized that a lot of the stuff that I read, I end up looking at it a lot more from the standpoint of how do I use this to get a point across than from the standpoint of how do I do this to further my own practice. Which is just something that happens sometimes when you become a teacher. So there's different theories of teaching the Dharma. And one of them is that there's this close teacher-disciple relationship that can lead to almost direct transmission. So when Venerable Kaitian, for example, gave me Dharma transmission, that's one of those moments. A teacher has recognized a student and has said, I'm transmitting the Dharma to you. It basically means recognizing that the student has the wisdom of their own. And in some forms of Buddhism where there's a lot of esoteric practices, in other words, sort of semi-secret practices, there's this idea that things can only be given directly from a teacher to a student in this sort of private way. So you would come and ask to be accepted as a student, and I might accept you as a student, and then, I sort of give you the Dharma. Then at the other end, there's a very noted Japanese monk named Shinran who had been one of those esoteric guys. He had studied this esoteric Buddhism, and he kind of realized he wasn't getting anywhere, and so basically he became a Pure Land Buddhist and founded a school of Buddhism called Jodo Shinshu, which means authentic Pure Land. In other words, my faith is authentic, and that is how I access the Pure Land. And what he said was, I have no disciples. I have no followers at all. Now, he really had thousands of disciples and thousands of followers. He saw it. He wasn't teaching anything. All he was doing was enabling them to hear the Dharma so that they could instruct themselves, basically. They would awaken themselves just through their faith. And so his role was just to kind of be there to help that happen. And I kind of like that. I was in a remote meeting with a bunch of chaplains, university chaplains from all over the world. And one of them was a Muslim guy. And he said something that I found very interesting. He was talking about what it means to be a Muslim chaplain. And he said, it used to be that the Muslim chaplain would come in and say, this is the way it is, and here's how you do this, and this is where you're supposed to be going. He says, basically like the captain of a ship. And he said, but these days things are different. And he said, I see myself more as a more experienced fellow passenger. And I think that's a very good way of looking at teaching the Dharma. I'm not going to tell you where to go or exactly how to get there. I'll accompany you on the way, and hopefully with my experience be able to give you a little bit of guidance. So there's other teachers, and this is not to disparage anyone. There's different student-teacher relationships, and that's fine. But that's kind of my approach to this. I decided this as I was reading about this during the last several months. So it's, how then would someone like me help someone like you with your practice? So there's an analogy that the Buddha uses where he's talking about spiritual practice as being like a fletcher, a person who makes an arrow, straightening the shaft of an arrow. So and he says, in the verses of this, he says, the mind becomes able to penetrate to wisdom the way a fletcher straightens a shaft and the arrow can fly straight. I think that's kind of a good way to look at what we're doing with our minds when we practice. Well, the thing is, I was thinking, a fletcher has to do this. And there's probably schools of thought on how to straighten a shaft and how to make an arrow, but you have to learn it from someone. But if you sit and have someone explain to you, if anybody's ever done any woodwork or carpentry or anything like that, to have someone explain it to you doesn't really get you very far. You have to try it, you have to fail at it, you have to try it again, you have to fail at it again, and you keep going until you try and succeed, right? You'll get close to where you want to go, and then you tweak things a little bit, and you get a little closer, and that's really the way learning the Dharma goes. You hear, oh, here's how I do this. Let me try this. Oh, that didn't work out. Let me tweak this a little bit, and eventually you'll get to where you have straightened your shaft. Your mind goes where you aim it. So I got this email from a guy who said, he said, I'm trying to learn, I'm trying to practice, and I'm not real sure where to go. I read a lot of books, but they're all sort of interpretations. They don't really tell me what I need to know. There's someone else's interpretation of the Dharma. And that's true, because, when you write a book, that's what you do. You put down sort of your interpretation of the Dharma. And so I explained to him over the course of several email exchanges that everything, even the scriptures, are interpretations. The Buddha, unfortunately, didn't write anything down. So what we have are transcriptions of things that have been conveyed through an oral tradition for quite a while before anybody wrote anything down. And then as Buddhism expanded and encountered other cultures, took form in other cultures and other languages and so on. So everything we have is an interpretation of what the Buddha taught. That's not really a bad thing. The same Muslim chaplain was talking about the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam. And somebody said something about reading a translation of it. How do I get a good translation? And he said, there's no translations. If it's not in Arabic, it's an interpretation. Yeah, because Muhammad wrote it down, and he wrote it in Arabic, and anything else is an interpretation, which if you read the Dharma kind of that way, then you're getting a lot closer to the heart of things, because everything is an interpretation. So how do we know the interpretation is a good one? How do we know that what we're getting is authentic? So there's different ways there's different kinds of teaching and learning. There's religious scholarship. If you go to school and take religious studies classes, you might study under a Buddhist scholar. And he might be a Buddhist or he might not, but he's read a lot of the books and he's read a lot of the histories and all that kind of thing. And that has its usefulness. It's not particularly helpful in terms of how to straighten the shaft of your arrow. If you learn about the history of archery, right, it's not going to really help you shoot an arrow straight and hit a target. And so that's kind of the scholarship approach. The ones who are practitioners and scholars, that's kind of useful too. And I try to do a little bit of that. I like to give people context. That's helpful for some people to sort of know where things came from. The other way to do it is to say, well, here's what works for me, and you only teach that. And then the third way is to kind of figure out, where does your student stand, and try to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. And in that case, the answers can be really different depending on who you're talking to. The approach can be different depending on who the student is. And so that's kind of what I decided I really want to try to do. It's not easy. It'd be very easy just to be scholarship's probably the most time consuming, because there's a whole lot to study. If I just said, well, here's what works for me and that's that, that'd probably be pretty simple, but probably be less useful for a lot of people. But to try to find where someone is and then say, okay, let me guide you from there to where you want to be, that's a little bit more complicated. It can be confusing for the student. But this is one of the things that I like about being here, about Vietnamese Buddhism, is they're not hung up on one thing, right? You go, oh, we can chant this and this works too. We can do Zen, we can read the Dhammapada, it's very open-minded. And the idea is if this works for you, good, do that, right? It's not a very narrow road. The danger of that is that it could be very superficial, but the possible benefit of that is that everybody gets to choose to work with what will help them awaken. And that's really what this is all about, is awakening. So, how do you know if a teacher is really going to help you with your practice? Like I said, we all bring different things with us. So one thing is, what is it that a teacher does? And the Buddha had this conversation with Ananda once. There was a monk named Udayi who was outside the monastery giving a Dharma talk. And I guess he was fairly new or something. I'm not sure why Ananda brought this up, but he was talking to the Buddha about this. And the Buddha said, there are 5 things that a teacher needs to have in mind when he gets ready to teach. The first is, I will teach step by step. So, in other words, how do you get from where I am to where I want to go? And in steps that will take you there. Won't do much good if you just walked in the door for the first time and said, wonder what Buddhism's all about. If somebody says, okay, well, here's the most advanced practice you can do, right? Or here's the most complicated sutra you can read or something. You have to take it step by step. The second thing is I will teach explaining the sequence of cause and effect. So what causes suffering? What causes the end of suffering, right? You have to learn that. The third is I will teach out of compassion. Whatever teacher you're sitting with, and by the way, I'm not a one teacher believer. I've had many wonderful teachers. Some of them are very different from one another. But they all taught from compassion. They all taught from a real heartfelt sense that they wanted to help people transcend their suffering. I will teach without expectation of material reward. You'll see people who sell a whole lot of books. That doesn't necessarily mean they're a good teacher. It means somebody's really good at marketing their books, right? I will teach without exalting myself or disparaging others. So I won't mention who those people are who sell a lot of books, right? It's the concept, not the person. You don't praise yourself, you don't disparage other people. So if you find those things, you've probably found a teacher that's worth listening to. And then recognize that the learning is yours. People can talk at you, but you put it into practice, you learn how to straighten the shaft of the arrow, like the Fletcher does. And then you can direct your mind where you're wanting it to go. So you'll get results. The results don't come because of knowledge, they come because of wisdom. Wisdom is what happens when you put the teaching into practice and you start to realize it for yourself. Someone emailed me earlier this week or late last week and basically told me that they had dropped a whole lot of stuff that they had been carrying around that was creating big problems for them, and that they suddenly felt freer than they had ever felt in their life. I'd love to take credit for that, but it's not really mine to take. They did the work and they got the result. So anyway, that's pretty much where I've been for the last few months. I've been thinking about this and how can what I do best benefit you. And so I hope that you've been thinking in terms of what you can do with your practice that will lead to wisdom for you. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Do we have questions here?
So you see, we have a picture here. So that's going to be here. 3 weekends, 3 Sunday, 3 weeks, right now. Now, as I mentioned earlier, today is the kind of big day of White City. The ceremony for the grand opening gift shop. Last 6 months, we all shut down. White Sand still working and growing. You don't go, you don't go. I would like to share with you the story about what happened in White Sand last week. The gift shop, we had a little gift shop there 5 years ago. We never think about we would have a big gift shop. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, one Sunday when I come back here to visit the temple, and then I see the door and window put on right on the storage. I wondered what happened. And I checked around, I checked the wrong channel, I checked, probably I found down. What do we do with this? He told me this will be the main anchor of the new shop, and this will be the window. I was astonished. What on you? That compassion had think about it, thought on my servant. The story between our master and him and God is the wish to bring a little good job out there to the here. Many years ago, I don't know how long, that conversation. The dumb compassion and thought about it, and think about it, when he told me he found somewhere on sale. That 2 items cost about $2,000, but he bought it and made it here only $190 something. That's it. From there, and we move on. And he said that, and the plan between Ron and the General Connection, they kind of set it up, put the window in, and put the door in, and then put the side. This is the window. And they thinking about the time the fundraising on the visitor. Yes, I'm happy for that. Next week, when I come back, that my compassion comes. Dr. John, I am 81. I was 9 paid the week before something happened. He knows about this. I look at him. Okay, that's good, but I need to go home and talk to my manager. And actually, I go home and talk to my wife and and next week, that's it. If we said, yeah, let's do it, and then only here, you be working every day, every day. They from the storage, people gift shop that we see there. Right? Wow. Before we recognize what he does, we need to recognize Donna. She comes to him every day. Of course, I give us. There are Donna just have the work for he done. Donna have him it easier. That's it for the gift shop. However, you need to talk about the children gift shop. And you know, the gift shop, I think gift shop comes from the Western ability. When me and my our master come to establish the number about the day, student day, people about the gift shop there. Actually, since our master had died, We are here. So we start growing slowly. However, we need to recognize shallow and broad on the bottom of our shallow here. Without shallow and broad, no way we can maintain. So and draw and keep up the normal life, big house, non-bound to buy a little. The little moving home here and staying here with us. One day, I talked to both and one day here to serve what's in there. So as you see, every day, Ron would job that the official tour guide of White Sand try to do this here. And then some the having running gives up for last 30 years. So we sincerely, for all of our hearts, and we sincerely recognize, we all see that, right? And I believe moving the little bit shop to the bigger shop with the assistance of many members here. You can? Yeah, we know there are many people, and also Tammy. I see Tammy, they're supposed to be very hard to get her. So having shared with you the story about gift shop, new gift shop, to recognize, to meet angels. There are many angels in White Sand. But we are trying to go over later because today we need to recognize Dharma compassion and Charlotte and God. I believe our Suko will have something to share, something or present or to service, right? Suko, my Suko. Cô đừng nghe ngon oh, this is the gift. Cháu có thể nói.
Con nói rằng we have offer you a bit more senior, so then we have to give people and we wish you always happy, happy forever and you live forever, and you have was a mission forever and you be forever.
Forever. So this is the gift from Suko to Suko and made it for you. I think it's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Trong cái việc đó là cô biết tiếng Việt á, cho nên có thể ở nhờ bác sơ giúp dịch luôn.
Now, do I get to make a speech?
Yeah.
I would like to make a speech. I would like to dedicate this to our new windows. It looks like the perfect set of flowers to fit in the new windows that I built.
You will be the Buddha in the future.
That's my
Can you read this for me?
If you give me a pair of eyeglasses, I could.
So this is the gift card signed by many members of the temple. But I think that Suko has written a long message, a long letter to Dharma Professor. And you want to say something before I translate this? Okay. I would like to read it and read for you. Well, this is the gift made by Supo Vietnam. She very talented on the making the gift like that. So we see that many signature here, right? So we all love you, we all appreciate you. But what she wants to say, dear Dharma compassion, thank you for whatever you've done for Voice. I said that before, but everybody knows that. Right? I think we think you are a bodhisattva. You're a bodhisattva for us, right? So whatever you've done to me, beside our master, I can confident to share with you that Dharma compassion in happiness, and I see his finger almost everywhere in his 16 acres. He spent work on the land, in the Buddha hall, on the gift shop, everywhere. I see his finger everywhere. So that's it. I just add on two more things. So besides your heart, you're talented, and we have to create a lot of things going in White Sand here. We growing, we look more beautiful because of what you've done for us here, right? We hope we Chico hope you will be long, not 10 years, more things to be done, right? We appreciate it, and hopefully you will live forever, like what you want to say. We have more things.
Maybe
We have more things to do, to be done.
Yeah, right. Ulterior motives.
Maybe you don't want the next project? Fiction. Promotion. Fiction. Yeah, that's what she goes like. Well, so actually, this is very beautiful words to you. We all know we love you, and we appreciate what you've done, and hopefully you will be happy forever. Okay? Okay?
The fundamental belief of Buddhism, everything is always changing.
Sure. Life is unpredictable.
Very.
That's why I am 81 now. I want to finish, let go it, and be done. Right?
It's 6 months. From March to September. 6 months. Every day.
So, anything we will, we'll have to give for okay. I would like Ron, we have to give on you too. I mean, to go. To go. Where the gift for Charlotte, for gift shop. Where the gift for gift shop. Then, you want to say something? Your teacher? Whoever, last thing
No, both, you're just a both.
How the relationship between Charlotte and Suko Vietnam? Suko Vietnam every year, about 1 year, and she had one beautiful teacher, English teacher, you saw. Every day, Suko Vietnam come on to give job and learn English with Charlotte. So, in celebration of the gift shop, Suko has a beautiful gift shop team and Ron.
Has to be sun and shine. And I mean, it's sun and shine.
Today, under simple, too simple, and has some flower and fruit. I want to say to you, we are very when you and Ron support the bishop and support the vice center. I am very happy coming out. I'm really happy, and I want to agree with you. shop. Good luck.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So we're so happy, wise and family, that's it. Oh, Master, today we have wow, that's all right. So we will take 30 minutes prep and then we will have the grand opening ceremony. I believe you have some ready. So we get together at about 12:15. 12:15 and get yourself ready, right? Right?
And so, is maybe in after this, we can have a grand opening. And after grand opening, we have a lunch.
Yeah.
Then we have a lunch together. So it's
Yeah, we will have lunch after the grand opening. I believe 12:30 we start, 25, 10 minutes. We have lunch together. Right? I will go.